All my life, I worked tirelessly to give my son, Michael, a good future. I did everything within my power so he would never go through the hardships I faced. Widowed early, I juggled 2 jobs, often going nights without sleep, pinching every penny, determined that he'd never feel hunger, never be cold, nor lack anything he might need. In doing so, I unknowingly created a monster. It was my 65th birthday. I wasn't hoping for a grand celebration, honestly, just a simple, happy birthday, Mom, would have been enough. I spent the whole day at home, alone, waiting for some display of care or affection from my son. Yet Michael did not send a single message. By the time he walked through the door, it was already past 7 at night. I heard the slam of the front door and the ringing laughter of his girlfriend, Aubrey. I was in the kitchen, stirring my coffee, hoping he might at least remember what day it was. He walked straight past the living room, ignoring me entirely. Michael. I called, my voice echoing a little. He stopped in the kitchen doorway, an irritated look on his face. Yeah. What? I forced a small, bitter smile. Oh, nothing. I just thought maybe you had something to say to me. He frowned, obviously not understanding. Say what? The words felt like a punch in the stomach. It's my birthday today. He blinked a few times, absorbing the information, then shrugged. Oh. Right. Well, happy birthday, he said. Then he turned away, heading for the couch. Aubrey let out a mocking laugh and threw herself down next to him. I felt a painful squeeze in my chest. I drew in a deep breath to compose myself. I should have been used to his indifference by now, but it still hurt. I went to the refrigerator and took out a modest slice of birthday cake I'd bought for myself. Nothing fancy, just enough so the day wouldn't pass without a tiny bit of recognition. I'd barely taken a bite when I heard Aubrey's voice, low but still clear. This house is really big. We could remodel it, you know, make it more modern. Michael replied in an equally casual tone, I've already thought about that. But I need to handle something first. My hand tightened on my fork. What kind of problem? Aubrey asked. My mom, he answered. My heart started pounding. You mean getting her to move out, she said. Exactly, he confirmed. Slowly, I stood up, feeling a rush of anger flood through my veins. I walked into the living room, stopping in front of them. What exactly are you two discussing? Michael crossed his arms, clearly ready for a confrontation. This house is just too big for all of us, Mom. You've lived here long enough. Now it's my turn. The coldness in his tone sent a shiver down my spine. You're asking me to leave my own house. He let out an impatient scoff. Actually, the house is mine now. I've decided you're not going to live here anymore. My fingers trembled, but I took a steadying breath, holding back the fiery anger I felt. I'm your mother, Michael. I'm the one who built this home, who paid for every single piece of it. Do you understand what you're saying? Of course I do, he said, rising to stand, hands in his pockets, looking arrogant. You're old. You can go live somewhere else. You can't stay here anymore. Next to him, Aubrey smirked, apparently delighted. Hey, maybe let us know what it's like, living on the street, she joked, and Michael cracked a half grin as if it were the funniest thing in the world. A tense silence settled over the room. I might have yelled, might have pleaded with him to reconsider, but instead, I did something he never saw coming, I smiled. All right, Michael, I said. I'll leave. He blinked, momentarily thrown off by how calmly I agreed. Good. By the time I'm back from work tomorrow, I want you gone. I gave him a single nod and turned away wordlessly. I headed upstairs to my bedroom, shut the door, and exhaled long and slow. My son thought he had one. He believed he would toss me out, that I would wander homeless, humiliated, dependent on others. Little did he know, I had been prepared for this for quite a while. I began packing my things at a measured pace, taking only the necessities. Everything else I would leave behind, his great conquest. Every piece of furniture, every keepsake, every corner of that house bore some part of my history. But in that moment, it all meant nothing. I folded my clothes, gathered my documents, grabbed my purse, and took one last look at the bedroom. There was nothing left for me there. Before leaving, I stopped in the kitchen and wrote a brief note on a scrap of paper. Good luck with your new home. I hope it's everything you've ever wanted. I placed the note on the kitchen table and walked out without a backward glance. I spent that night in a low-cost motel, sleeping more peacefully than I had in years. For the first time, I felt free from carrying an ungrateful son on my back. Over the next 2 days, Michael and Aubrey acted as if they had conquered the world. He bragged to his friends that he'd finally gotten rid of that burden of a mother, and now he could enjoy the house however he pleased. It's all mine now, he boasted in a voice note he sent a buddy. The pair opened a bottle of wine, ordered expensive food, and celebrated their new chapter, oblivious to what was about to happen. On the morning of the third day, Michael left early for work, still content with his victory. He was certain the house was securely in his hands, until he returned that evening and discovered a scene that would be seared into his memory forever. The locks had been changed. He tried the doorknob, locked. He took out his key, but it no longer fit. He knocked, kicked, pounded, nothing. Then he spotted the notice taped to the door. Property for rent, contact Northside Realty. His furious shout echoed up and down the street. What the hell is this? The neighbors poked their heads out to see what was happening. A few older ladies whispered among themselves, entertained by the drama. Michael yanked the paper off the door, crushing it in his hand, as if that would magically fix the situation. Desperate, he took out his phone and called me. I answered on the third ring, my voice calm. Yes, I said. What did you do? He roared, the anger practically buzzing through the speaker. I smiled, savoring the moment of vengeance I had waited so long for. I didn't do anything, Michael. You're the one who told me to leave. Looks like now you're the one without a place to stay. Silence. I could practically feel his mind racing on the other end of the line. I'm the one on the street. That can't be, this house is mine. I nearly laughed out loud. Funny, wasn't that what you said earlier? Now suddenly it's not so simple. Stop playing games. What did you do? His voice shook with frustration. I sighed as though speaking to a stubborn child. Michael, my dear ungrateful son. Did you truly think I would shuffle away humiliated, sleeping on the sidewalk while you and your girlfriend laughed at me? The house is mine. Or maybe you'd prefer to call the police and we can have a friendly chat right there, face to face. I ended the call before he could respond. I was already waiting in front of the house when he arrived, red-faced with rage. You vile old woman, I'm going to sue you. He spat the words, pointing a shaking finger in my direction. I crossed my arms, unimpressed. By all means. And while you're at it, why don't you explain exactly when I ever gave you this house, He lifted his chin defiantly. You said it was mine. When was that, again? I asked. Because from where I stand, you just took it upon yourself and never once asked me whether it was truly yours. He opened his mouth to respond, but froze when he noticed a man in a neat suit approaching. Good afternoon, the man said politely, holding a folder under his arm. I'm Richard from Northside Realty. Ma'am, you asked me to come by, and I've brought all the necessary documents. Michael's bewildered stare flicked from me to the realtor. Realty. Documents. I maintained my stance, arms crossed. Michael, you believe this was my house. You're not wrong, I did live here, but only under a specific arrangement. He blinked again, completely lost. What do you mean? I gave him a slow, almost cruel smile. I sold the property 6 months ago. He went pale. What? That's right, I said softly. I sold it. Took the money and used it to live my life. But part of my agreement allowed me to remain here as a tenant. I've been paying rent all this time. Michael shook his head in disbelief. No, that's not possible. You're lying. Richard cleared his throat, flipping open his folder. Sir, these papers confirm that the property belongs to Northside Realty. Your mother was simply our lessee. She chose to end her lease, so the property is once again available. We'll be seeking new tenants. No, this has to be some kind of mistake, Michael insisted, voice wavering. I shrugged. No mistake, Michael. You just assumed you had ownership, but that was never the truth. And now you're left with nothing, all because you tried to kick me out. He glared at me, hatred shining in his eyes as he realized how completely he had miscalculated. You tricked me. Of course I did, I replied. You really thought you could throw your own mother out without any consequences. You're the one who got rid of me. You left me with nothing, he nearly sobbed, voice quavering. I gave a casual wave of my hand. Wrong. You left yourself with nothing. For a moment, Michael looked about to explode. His eyes were red with fury as he stared at me, and for the first time, he understood that he wasn't nearly as clever as he believed himself to be. The best part was, his nightmare was just beginning. He stood there, unmoving, looking at Richard as if the realtor were some malevolent being sent to ruin him. This can't be real, he muttered, grabbing for the documents Richard offered. I need to check everything. You're welcome to, Richard said politely. It's all in order. Michael's expression passed from shock to denial, finally landing on desperation. I don't have anywhere to go, he mumbled. I almost laughed. Oh, that's too bad. Didn't you mention something about me telling you how it felt to live on the street? I guess now you can be the one to find out. You can't do this, he shouted, his voice cracking at the end. Actually, I said, I can. And I have. Remember how you told me to clear out in a single day? Funny that you're asking for more time now. Michael turned to me, eyes blazing with fury. You're a monster. I tilted my head, smiling with a kind of cruel amusement. No, Michael. I'm your mother. Or I was. He looked stricken for a second, like that reminder hit him harder than the lock on the door. Mom, please, I put a hand up, stopping him. No. You made it very clear you didn't want me in your life. Now go live with the choice you made. Richard, looking a bit uncomfortable at the intensity of the scene, cleared his throat. Sir, I have to ask you and your girlfriend to leave the property now. We have potential renters scheduled to view it soon. Michael's face was etched with despair. But I don't have anywhere to go, he repeated, almost begging. Can't I stay even a week? Richard glanced at me uncertainly, and I just gave a cool smile. No chance. You made me pack up and go in a day. You can manage the same. Michael whipped his head toward me, tears of rage and humiliation in his eyes. I hate you, he seethed. I sighed. You're the one who came up with this plan, Michael. Meanwhile, Aubrey, who had been silent until then, finally spoke up. This is absurd, she snapped, her frustration turning toward Michael. You dragged me into this, swearing this place was yours. Now we're on the street. I didn't know, he stammered. She snatched her handbag, disgust twisting her features. Yeah, because you're an idiot. She marched off down the sidewalk, not bothering to look back. The perfect couple already showing its first cracks, and I savored every second. Richard cleared his throat again, gesturing for Michael to step aside. Sir, you really must leave now. Our company has people ready to view the property. Michael hesitated, turning to me one last time. Mom, please don't do this. I looked him right in the eyes. I'm done, Michael. You made your choice. Now you can live with it. Finally, he stepped away, shoulders slumped in defeat. Richard locked the door, and Michael stood there with his head in his hands, as though his entire world had collapsed. And, in many ways, it had. He lost the easy life he assumed he'd have once he'd driven me out, the girlfriend who left at the first sign of trouble, the house he never truly owned. He was alone. I turned and walked away, not once looking back. The last thing I saw was Richard snapping the padlock shut, Michael sinking to the curb, face buried in his palms. The following months were not kind to him. Through acquaintances, I heard that Michael tried to couch surf with friends, but nobody wanted to host him for long. No one likes freeloaders. He tried calling Aubrey, only to find she'd moved on to a new boyfriend, someone with real money. With nowhere left to turn, he rented a tiny, run-down room in a boarding house, forced to take on 2 jobs just to pay the bills. Reality hit him like a train. For the first time, he had to survive on his own, learning just how unprepared he really was. As for me, I ended up living better than ever. With the money from selling the house, I rented a nice, cozy apartment. I traveled, visited places I'd always dreamed of, and finally allowed myself to live without the constant strain of propping up a thankless son. Best of all, I slept soundly every night. Not long ago, I received a text message from Michael. Mom, can we talk? I couldn't be bothered to answer. He had his chance to value me when I was right there under the same roof. Instead, he tossed me aside. Now he can deal with the consequences. I moved on and never looked back. And Michael learned the hardest way possible that arrogance and ingratitude come with a price, a heavy one that he, unfortunately, is left paying, all on his own.